It arrived on a Wednesday, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. Linda had left for Kroger at 9:15. Mrs. Calloway was through the hedge by 9:20. She found Grandma sitting at the kitchen table with a page torn from the Sunday crossword spread flat in front of her. The page was creased. Grandma had been hiding it under her mattress, waiting for the right moment. 3 words circled in red ballpoint. The ink pressed hard enough to dent the newsprint. Help. Trapped. Call. And one more word circled separately at the bottom of the page in a shakier hand. Thanksgiving. Mrs. Calloway photographed the page with her phone and texted the image to me. I was at my desk in Knoxville when it arrived. I opened it, zoomed in, and read the 4 words. My hands didn't shake. My pulse didn't spike. I'd trained for this. Not this exact moment, but this exact type of moment. The signal from a victim who's found the courage to ask. The coded message that bypasses the gatekeeper. In my professional life, I'd received these signals. A note passed to a visiting nurse. A letter slipped to a mail carrier. A phone call made in whispers while the abuser was in the shower. Each one was a small act of extraordinary bravery. This one was from my grandmother. 78 years old. Bruised hand. Arthritis so bad she could barely grip a pen. And she'd pressed that red ink hard enough to dent the paper. I stood up from my desk, walked to Janet's cubicle, and set my phone on her desk. Screen up. We have it, I said. She's asking for help. And she wants us there on Thanksgiving. Janet, Paul Whitfield, and I met in the Ada's office the same afternoon. Janet had the full case file spread across his desk. The bank statements. The fraudulent POA. Mrs. Calloway's affidavit about the secondary account withdrawals. Pharmacy records confirming 3 months of unpaid methotrexate. The documented denied visits. My call recordings. And now the coded crossword. A voluntary request for help from the victim herself. Whitfield reviewed the crossword photograph for a long time. She chose the day. Yes, I said. Thanksgiving. The entire family will be there. He looked at Janet. You're comfortable with a multi-subject confrontation? Janet nodded. All 3 individuals associated with the financial exploitation will be present at the same address. It's efficient. And it protects the victim from any individual retaliation after the fact. Whitfield signed the authorization for an APS emergency intervention. Janet would serve as the lead APS officer. A deputy from the Blount County Sheriff's Office, Deputy Sam Morris, a 15-year veteran, would accompany for safety and to serve any necessary legal papers. I would be there as family. Technically, I had no official role. I was a concerned granddaughter, who happened to work in the same department. But we all knew why I needed to be in that room. Grandma had sent the signal to me. Not to APS. Not to the sheriff. To Bethany. The granddaughter she'd given $500 to 20 years ago. The one she'd taught crossword puzzles to on a Sunday morning porch. The one she trusted to understand 4 words circled in red. I was going home for Thanksgiving. 3 weeks is a long time when someone you love is counting the days. I went to work each morning. I reviewed other cases, interviewed other victims, filed other reports. My colleagues in the Knoxville office didn't know about Grandma's case. Only Tom and Janet had the details. To everyone else, I was the same Bethany I'd always been. Quiet, thorough, first one in, last one out. At night, I'd sit at my kitchen table with the 26 pages of bank statements and go through them again. Not because I'd missed anything, because I needed to make sure. Every number had to be right, every date confirmed, every fraudulent charge documented. If this went to trial, and it would, the evidence had to be airtight. There was no room for a missed decimal or a transposed date. I thought about Linda on the porch with the graduation photo. I didn't hate my mother. I didn't even pity her. I just needed her to stop. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't make the hurt less. Mrs. Calloway called every few days with updates. Grandma was eating. Grandma was sitting up. Grandma had put on her blue church dress, the one she saved for special occasions, and hung it on the outside of her closet door. She wants it ready, Mrs. Calloway said. She knows you're coming. I asked about Linda. Same as always. Shopping on Wednesdays, church on Sundays. Acts like nothing's wrong. That was the thing about financial exploitation. The perpetrators almost never think they are doing anything wrong. They tell themselves they are borrowing. They tell themselves the victim would want them to have it. They tell themselves the money was theirs all along. It's the most comfortable crime in America. Until someone pulls out the bank statements. 10 days before Thanksgiving, Mrs. Calloway forwarded me a group text from Darren. He'd created a family thread, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone except me. With the subject, Foster Thanksgiving at Grandma's. The message read, "Hey everyone, Thanksgiving at Grandma Helen's this year. Thursday, 11 a.m. I'm doing the turkey. Bring sides. Let's give Grandma a real family Thanksgiving she deserves." 22 people confirmed. Aunt Patricia, Uncle Glenn, 6 cousins, Darren's wife, Linda's friends from Bible study, and Pastor Johnson from First Baptist. The same man who'd laughed when Linda called me worthless at the church potluck. I read that guest list and smiled for the first time in weeks. I didn't need an invitation. I had something better. I spent the next 3 days preparing copies of the bank statements, 3 sets, because you always bring backups. The POA document with the hospital date highlighted. Janet's formal APS investigation summary. Mrs. Calloway's sworn affidavit. The crossword photograph printed on paper. I organized everything in a manila folder labeled with nothing but a case number. At work, I handled 2 more routine cases. Went to a training seminar on Thursday. Had lunch with a colleague on Friday. Normal week, normal life. Except that every evening I'd come home, open the folder, and review the contents one more time. Then I'd close it, set it on the counter, and cook dinner. On the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I packed a small bag, drove to Maryville, checked into the Comfort Inn on Lamar Alexander Parkway, the same road where Linda made her ATM withdrawals every other Wednesday. My room was on the 2nd floor. I laid the folder on the desk, set my alarm for 6, and did what I always do the night before a big case. I went to sleep. 14 dinners. That's what I counted every night before Thanksgiving. 14 meals where my grandmother sat at her own table in her own home, eating food bought with her own money. Money she couldn't touch anymore. If someone in your life is being silenced by the people closest to them, keep watching. Because silence has an expiration date. Thanksgiving morning, 6 a.m. I lay in the hotel bed and stared at the ceiling. Outside, Maryville was quiet. The kind of quiet you only get in small towns on holidays when everyone's either sleeping in or already in the kitchen. I showered, dressed, and put on the grey blazer I'd packed. Not a holiday outfit, a work outfit. The same blazer I wore to court appearances, to victim interviews, to every professional moment that mattered in my career. Grandma would see it and understand immediately. Blazer meant business. I drove to the Main Street Diner at 9. Eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee. I ate slowly, read the Maryville paper, the crossword section out of habit, thought about the 22 people who'd be sitting around Grandma's table in 3 hours eating turkey carved by my brother in a house where the gutters were falling off because the repair money went to online gambling. At 10:15, Janet pulled into the diner parking lot in her state-issued sedan. Deputy Morris arrived 5 minutes later in his cruiser. We sat in a corner booth. Janet had the case file in a leather portfolio. Deputy Morris had his badge and a calm demeanor that comes from 15 years of knocking on doors people don't want opened. Timeline. Janet said. We arrive at 12:30. Family should be seated by then. I'll present the APS investigation notice. Deputy Morris provides security and serves the temporary protective order if needed. Bethany, your family. You're there for Helen. Deputy Morris looked at me. You sure about the timing? Thanksgiving dinner. I set my coffee down. My grandmother chose the day. I'm honoring her choice. At 12:15, we got in our cars. 3 vehicles on the road, Janet's sedan, Deputy Morris's cruiser, and my 10-year-old Honda Civic. We drove through Maryville in a quiet procession. Past the elementary school where Grandma taught for 40 years. Closed for the holiday. Flag still flying. Past First Baptist where Pastor Johnson was probably already at the farmhouse saying grace over turkey bought with stolen pension money. Past Henderson's Hardware where Darren worked 6 days a week and still believed his sister was the problem. The road to the farmhouse runs through 2 miles of farmland. Rolling hills, white fences, hay bales wrapped in plastic. Beautiful country. The kind of landscape that makes you think nothing bad could happen here. 6 vehicles were parked in Grandma's gravel driveway. Darren's pickup. Linda's sedan. Ray's new F-150. 3 more I didn't recognize. Cousins probably. Smoke rose from the kitchen chimney. Laughter drifted through the walls. The smell of roasted turkey and sage dressing hung in the cold November air. I parked on the road just past the mailbox. Janet pulled in behind me. Deputy Morris behind her. I stepped out of the car. The gravel crunched under my shoes. I looked at the porch, the wicker chair where Grandma and I used to sit with the crossword. I straightened my blazer, picked up the manila folder from the passenger seat. Janet flanked my left. Deputy Morris flanked my right. We walked up the porch steps together. 3 pairs of shoes on old wood. I raised my hand and knocked. Not the polite knock I'd done 6 weeks ago, when Linda shut the door in my face. A professional knock. 3 firm raps. The kind that says, this conversation is happening whether you're ready or not. Footsteps inside. The scrape of a chair. Someone laughed. Cut short by the sound of the knock. I heard Darren's voice. I'll get it. Probably Uncle Glenn running late. The door swung open. Darren stood there with a dish towel over his shoulder and a smile on his face. The easy smile of a man hosting Thanksgiving, doing his duty, being the good son. The smile lasted exactly as long as it took him to recognize me. Then it died. His eyes moved from my face to Janet's APS badge on her lanyard, then to Deputy Morris's uniform, badge, gun belt, radio. The dish towel slipped off his shoulder and landed on the floor. What? Darren's voice cracked. What is this? I said, Hi, Darren. We need to come in. He didn't move. He stood in the doorway like a man who'd opened the wrong door in a dream. Like if he just stood still long enough, the scene would rearrange itself into something that made sense. Deputy Morris stepped forward. Calm, professional. Sir, we are here on official business. May we come inside? Darren stepped back. Automatic, the way you step back when someone in uniform asks you to. We walked through the front hall, past the coat rack, past the family photos on the wall, past Linda's graduation portrait that Grandma had kept for 37 years. The dining room opened up ahead of us. A long oak table, white tablecloth, the good china, Grandma's wedding set, the one she only brought out for holidays. 22 people seated around it. Turkey in the center, still steaming. Cranberry sauce, sweet potato casserole, dinner rolls. And at the far end of the table, in the chair closest to the kitchen, sat my grandmother, Helen Marie Foster, 78 years old, blue church dress, hands folded in her lap. She looked at me. She looked at my grey blazer, and she smiled. The room went silent in the way rooms do when the unexpected walks in with a badge and a uniform. 22 forks stopped mid-air. Linda was standing at the head of the table, carving knife in one hand, serving fork in the other. She froze. Ray sat to her left, a glass of wine halfway to his lips. The glass stopped. Pastor Johnson sat across from Ray, napkin tucked into his collar. His face went from confused to concerned in about 2 seconds. Aunt Patricia, Uncle Glenn, 6 cousins, Darren's wife holding their toddler on her lap, 2 women from Bible study. All of them staring at me, at Janet, at the deputy in the uniform. Linda found her voice first. Bethany, what are you? Who are these people? Janet stepped forward. She opened her portfolio and removed a document, the formal APS investigation notice. My name is Janet Caldwell, Adult Protective Services. We have an active investigation into the financial exploitation of Helen Marie Foster. She set the document on the table next to the cranberry sauce. Over the past 24 months, approximately $127,000 has been withdrawn from Mrs. Foster's bank accounts. The withdrawals are traced to Raymond Foster and Linda Foster. The words landed on that table like stones dropped into still water. You could see the ripples. Aunt Patricia's hand going to her mouth. Uncle Glenn leaning back in his chair. The cousins exchanging glances. Linda set down the carving knife slowly. This is Thanksgiving, she said. Her voice was shaking. This is my mother's Thanksgiving dinner. You can't come in here, please have a seat, Deputy Morris said. Janet laid the bank statements on the table, all 26 pages. She placed them carefully, fanning them out between the turkey platter and the dinner rolls. Each page facing the family so they could read the numbers themselves. These are Mrs. Foster's bank statements from First Horizon Bank. Obtained through a court-authorized subpoena, Janet said. They document systematic withdrawals totaling $127,000. Monthly transfers of $2,000 to Raymond Foster labeled as household expenses. Charges to a medical billing company that does not exist. Payment for home repairs, she gestured toward the window where the broken gutter was visible from the dining room, that were never performed. Ray set his wine glass down. His hand was shaking so badly that the wine sloshed over the rim, leaving a red stain on Grandma's white tablecloth. Helen gave us that money, he said. His voice was too loud, too fast. She wanted to help us. Mr. Foster, Janet interrupted, Mrs. Foster's arthritis medication has been unpaid for 3 months. Her pharmacy discontinued the prescription. Her property taxes are 6 months delinquent. The power of attorney was signed during a hospitalization for pneumonia, and it has never been reviewed or renewed. Ray opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. He looked like a man standing on a trap door who'd just heard the bolt slide. Linda hadn't sat down. She was still standing at the head of the table, gripping the back of her chair with both hands, knuckles white. She turned to me. Her eyes were wild. Not scared, not sorry, furious. You did this. It wasn't a question. You called the cops on your own mother. I looked at my mother across that table full of food and bank statements. 22 people watching. The turkey going cold. The cranberry sauce sitting next to page 14, where $4,500 had disappeared into a roof repair that never happened. I spoke in the same voice I use in courtrooms. Level, clear, no heat. I didn't call the cops, Mom. I am the investigation. The room shifted. I could feel it. A collective intake of breath from 22 people who'd spent 10 years believing I was nothing. My name is Bethany Foster. I'm a senior investigator for the Tennessee Department of Human Services, Adult Protective Services Division. I've held this position for 10 years. In that time, my unit has investigated and resolved 47 cases of elder financial exploitation, recovering over $3 million in stolen assets for victims across East Tennessee. I paused. Let the words settle. Watched them land on every face at that table. Aunt Patricia's, Uncle Glenn's, the cousins, Pastor Johnson's, every person who'd heard Linda's version of me for a decade. You always said I sat in Knoxville doing Lord knows what. I looked at Linda. Lord finally knows what I do, Mom. Linda exploded. The chair behind her crashed to the floor. You ungrateful, after everything I sacrificed, you come into my mother's house and accuse me, how dare you? She was screaming. Hands shaking, face red, spit on her lower lip. Every word louder than the last, filling the dining room, rattling the china. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step back. I stood exactly where I was and waited. I'd done this before. Stood in the center of someone's rage, and let it burn out. It's the first thing they teach you in crisis intervention. The louder they get, the quieter you stay. Power doesn't come from volume. It comes from the person who doesn't need it. Linda ran out of words. She stood there breathing hard, hands balled into fists, tears streaming. I said, it is her house, Mom. And her money. And her choice. Ray made one more attempt. He leaned forward in his chair and said, Janet, is that your name? Listen, this is a family matter. Helen is my mother-in-law. She asked us to manage things. She signed the papers. This is all a misunderstanding. Janet didn't blink. Mr. Foster, the power of attorney was executed during a hospitalization for pneumonia. Mrs. Foster's arthritis medication has been unpaid for 3 months. Her property taxes are delinquent. The charges to Allied Medical Solutions, the billing company listed on 6 checks from the account, that company was dissolved in 2019. It has no active address, no phone number, and no employees. The checks were deposited into a personal account held by Linda Foster. Ray stared at the tablecloth, at the red wine stain spreading slowly into the white linen. He didn't say another word. And then my grandmother stood up. Mrs. Calloway, who'd been sitting beside her, invited by me for exactly this moment, took her elbow and helped her rise. The room turned. Every head, every eye. Grandma Helen stood at the end of that long oak table, in her blue church dress, with her bruised hand resting on the edge of the tablecloth. She was trembling. Not from weakness. From the effort of holding back 40 years of patience until the right moment. I taught second grade for 40 years, she said. Her voice was thin but clear, the voice of a woman who'd spent 3 decades commanding a classroom. I saved every penny I could. I raised my children in this house. And they took everything except my crossword puzzles. She paused. Looked at Linda. Looked at Ray. That was their mistake. Nobody at that table breathed. Pastor Johnson stared at his napkin. He wasn't laughing now. None of them were. Darren was standing in the doorway between the dining room and the kitchen. He hadn't moved since we walked in. His face had gone through every stage, shock, denial, confusion. And now it was something worse. Recognition. He looked at me. I could see it in his eyes. He was replaying every conversation, every email I'd sent that he'd dismissed. Every time I'd tried to tell him something was wrong and he'd shut me down. You were trying to tell me, he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. The email about the property tax. I thought you were just, he stopped. He couldn't finish the sentence. I said, I know what you thought, Darren. He pressed his hand against the doorframe like he needed it to hold him up. His eyes were red. He was looking at the bank statements on the table, the 26 pages of evidence that proved everything his sister had been trying to say and everything his parents had been hiding. Deputy Morris stepped forward and addressed the room. His voice was measured, practiced. At this time, Raymond Foster is being asked to accompany me for questioning regarding potential felony elder financial exploitation under Tennessee Code Annotated Section 71-617. Linda Foster is being served with a temporary order restricting contact with Helen Foster and access to her financial accounts pending the completion of the APS investigation. Linda was led toward the door. She passed Grandma's chair on the way out. She stopped. Grandma looked up at her daughter. Not with anger, not with contempt. With sadness. Quiet, heavy 55-year-old sadness. I kept your graduation photo on the wall, Linda. 40 years. I was so proud of you. Linda's face crumpled. She cried. Not the tears of someone who's sorry. The tears of someone who's caught. I know the difference. I've seen it 47 times. 3 months after Thanksgiving, Ray Foster accepted a plea deal. Felony elder financial exploitation. 18 months of supervised probation. Full restitution of $48,000 to be paid over 5 years. A permanent no-contact order with Grandma Helen. His attorney argued financial hardship. The judge pointed out that Mr. Foster had managed to purchase a new truck and a wardrobe of Carhartt jackets, while his mother-in-law went without arthritis medication. The hardship argument did not go well. Linda's case went to trial in February. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on 2 counts of financial exploitation and 1 count of theft over $10,000. Sentencing is pending. The restraining order remains in effect. Grandma Helen's power of attorney was formally revoked by the Blount County Probate Court. Her accounts were frozen, audited, and restored to her sole control. The balance won't reach $131,000 again. Some of that money is gone for good, but the bleeding stopped. Her property taxes were paid. I covered them myself, and Grandma insisted on paying me back at $12 a month because that's who she is. Her methotrexate prescription was reinstated. A home health nurse visits 3 times a week. Mrs. Calloway comes by every day. Darren was silent for 2 months after Thanksgiving. No calls, no emails, no texts. On a Sunday in late January, an email arrived in my inbox. Subject line empty. Body, I'm sorry. I should have listened. I wrote back, come have dinner with Grandma on Sunday. She misses you. He came. He brought flowers and a crossword puzzle book from the dollar store. Grandma made him sit in the wicker chair on the porch, and wouldn't let him leave until he'd finished the first puzzle. He got stuck on 7 across. She helped him. Sunday morning, April. I drove the 45 minutes from Knoxville to Maryville with the windows down. Dogwood trees in bloom along Route 9, the mountains soft and green in the distance. I pulled into the gravel driveway of the farmhouse. The gutters had been replaced. Darren did it himself. 3 weekends in a row. The garden was coming back. Mrs. Calloway had helped Grandma plant new tomato starts and a row of basil along the fence. The herb bed was weeded. The porch steps were swept. On the porch, in the wicker chair, sat Grandma Helen. 88 pounds of patience and crossword puzzles in a blue cardigan. A cup of coffee on the armrest. The Sunday paper open on her lap. I sat down in the chair beside her. She handed me a pencil. We worked in silence for a while. Just the scratch of graphite on newsprint and the cardinals calling from the cedar tree. She tapped a clue with her finger. 9 letters. What you build when no one is watching. I smiled. Character, Grandma. She nodded, filled it in. I knew you'd get that one. The quiet ones are often fighting the hardest battles you'll never see. The people who mock your silence will never understand what you are building inside it. But the ones who need you will always find a way to call. A crossword puzzle. 4 words circled in red. That's all it took to unravel 10 years of lies. If someone you love is being silenced by a spouse, a child, a caretaker, remember, the quiet ones are often the ones fighting the hardest battles you'll never see. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Like, comment, and subscribe to Quiet Justice Tales. Leave a comment if you've ever been underestimated, because on this channel, silence always finds its voice.